Hello and welcome to HCCLA's Reasonable Doubt. My name is Murray Newman and I am your host for tonight. For those of you that are trying to watch on Facebook, you probably can't see us and may not see this until later, but we are having some technical difficulties with Facebook that we are trying to work out. We've got a great show tonight. Finally, we have Joe Vinas, who is the actual president of HCCLA. He did not show up to take over for me at the banquet. There were some questions over whether or not we had a January 6th type deal where he wasn't the actual president, but he's finally agreed to show up and acknowledge that he is president. Joe, thanks for being here tonight.
I think we need to fly the HCCLA logo upside down.
To show that there's...
that we're in distress.
I mean, you know, Figman was very sad when I was leaving, and I don't know if that was more about you or about me or what have you. But I'm glad to finally have you on the show because I want to talk about, you know, what we have in store for your administration. And, you know, you've got 1 year and then Brent Mayer's taking over.
Oh, yeah.
So that's going to be...
Brent Mayer?
Yeah. Do you know Brent Mayer?
Yeah, he spoke at Waltrip a few weeks before our graduation.
This is my son, Luke Newman, who's here tonight, and you're saying Brent Mayer came and spoke at Waltrip?
Yeah.
About what?
It was some anti-bullying campaign.
Brent Mayer came and talked to you all about bullying, like when he was a kid?
No, like recently. Like currently in his life.
Like he's being bullied as an adult?
He's actively being bullied.
Oh, man, that's terrible. I feel terrible for Mayer. That's,
I
mean, he's almost 50. You would think he could handle that as a 50-year-old.
It's not surprising, but...
Yeah, actually we had this fundraiser, and we raised enough money to buy him this anti-bullying bear named Bernard.
Oh, well, that's really nice of y'all to do.
I really hope. If you would give this to him, that'd be really great.
You make me proud every day.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we have my son, Luke Newman. Yes, he is my son. Don't let the hair fool you. I also had a beautiful head of hair at that age. Maybe not that beautiful. I'm very proud of my son. He just graduated from Waltrip High School and he is headed to St. Thomas, University of St. Thomas in the fall. And I thought, you know, what would be a good topic for a show like this that I think everybody could use is what are the things that you would tell your college-bound freshman before he goes off to college? Because, Joe, I'm sure in your practice you have had the occasion to represent plenty of college students who are good kids that just did something really stupid while they're at
Oh, yeah. Well, not only do you have the criminal aspect of it that we deal with that, you know, some of our clients got exposed to in the juvenile system, and then early on, you know, when they're 17 and 18 in high school, but now that you're going off to college and people are away from their parents and they get that freedom, sometimes it's, you know, a little too tempting. But not only do you have to worry about criminal consequences, but you've got to worry about infractions on campus and what the school administration can do to you. So, yeah, I'm glad we've got Luke, and it's going to be interesting stuff to talk about.
Now, you've got 2 daughters.
No.
How many?
A daughter and a son.
You have a daughter and a son?
I do.
That's how well I keep up. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. How old are they?
My daughter's 14. She's going to start her freshman year in high school in the fall, and my son's 10. He'll be going to 5th grade. So
you've got a little bit of time before you have to completely stress out, and you get to worry about, you know, both genders and the issues, because I think it's fair to say that there are different issues that you have to worry about there. And, you know, as you go, I remember being so scared when he was going off to school and going to Waltrip as a high schooler, and even then, you know, junior high, and the second you realize that your kid really at the age of 10 can be charged in the juvenile system, you start to sweat a little bit.
Definitely.
And then, you know, you look around and you realize suddenly that you're representing clients that are actually younger than your kid, and that your kid could be charged as an adult, and then you really start to sweat.
Right.
And right about the time you get used to that, you send them off to college.
Yep.
So,
and it's not good when it's you or me, and we routinely anger the DA.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, there's a lot of goodwill. Now, the good thing is that you and I roughly have had about the same amount of time in the Harris County criminal justice system. I was a misdemeanor chief, which is very, very high up in the hierarchy, as we all know, and you were my 3.
Right.
And
22 years ago.
Yeah. So I've been doing this for 25 now, and we've had our kids grow up in this kind of family, and so most people know our kids, except me. Obviously, I dropped the ball on not knowing that it was your son.
You know, it's your age. I'll forgive it.
But you know, you're not on Facebook, so I put this on you. So you're not posting everything your kid
Right, I
does
don't.
like I do. But so what are there are obvious things that we worry about when we talk about our kids going off to both high school and college. Let's talk about high school first. Like you've got an incoming freshman. What are the things that worry you the most as a parent?
Well, and I've seen this happen to kids in high school, and and I'm sure Luke has seen this recently. Even if you've got a good kid going into high school, trouble seems to find him. I mean, I think we've all seen that, and you're forced to, especially if you go to a big school, you're forced to be around people that maybe you don't pick as your friend, but you're with them multiple times a day, and sometimes you just happen to be there and they do something stupid. And we all have seen some of the school police officers who kind of have a shoot first, ask questions later mentality, who just scoop everybody up, and for something that could be ridiculously foolish,
Right.
that your kid didn't even do, they could now end up charged and in the juvenile system. And if not, at the very least, in hot water with the school administration and facing some disciplinary infraction that could affect their future when it comes to going to college or even beyond that. So, that's kind of my number one thing, is making sure that your kids not only are looking out for themselves, but are careful of their surroundings and who they're around and what the knuckleheads they're hanging out with are doing. Because we all, at that age, we all do really, no offense, really stupid stuff.
And knock on wood, despite his hair and dressing in all overall black and overall beauty, we luckily got through high school relatively unscathed. But one of the things that I think that I would advise you, as you've got someone going into high school, that I think really benefited with is making sure you know your kids' friends, making sure that you're involved in the school and they know you. I got roped into being the PTA president at his school. People just sign me up to be president of things.
You get roped into president a lot.
I'm a sucker for that. But but there was a time when Luke was at school, and all of a sudden, somebody started an Instagram.
Waltrip sleeping.
The Waltrip sleeping, and the whole thing was someone had it. It was an anonymous account where someone was going around, and if they caught a student asleep, they were taking their picture.
It's probably a teacher.
And I get a call from the principal, who luckily knew me because of the PTA, and he's like, "Well, we think it's your kid." And all
Which it was not.
It was not. No, it was.
For the record, it was not me.
It was not. But I had to go up there and slide into lawyer mode real quick. Give me your phone. That's my phone. It's not your phone. They're
Right.
gonna ask for your phone. Don't give them your phone. And then I'm like, "What do you got to hide on this?" And I'm having to have this conversation with him like I have with my clients.
Well, that's when you need the screensaver.
Get a warrant
That I got.
Yeah, nice.
That's what it needs to say.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Luckily, that was something that resolved itself fairly easily. Because he wasn't behind it. But that's also something that could get a kid kicked out of school when it's technically not breaking the law.
Right.
But that opens up a whole other can of worms that we have to worry about, is stuff kids do on their social media.
Oh yeah.
And so I don't know how much of that is prevalent right now with your 14-year-old or not.
We've kept her off mostly. She's got a couple deals, but I'm especially when it comes to my kids, I am very anti-TikTok. Yeah. Not that I'm not one of these crazies who thinks TikTok needs to be illegal.
You're still bitter over that video I posted of you.
Yes.
Okay.
What video did you post of him?
No, it's a joke.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah.
Whoosh.
Sorry, keep up with it. But no, I'm okay with them being on social media and seeing it, but because that's the real world that they live in. But I don't want them posting. They're just way too young. And I know there are kids younger than them whose parents make these accounts and have their kids do cute little things on video. But I like to keep them off of that as much as possible for now. Obviously I won't be able to control that forever.
Yeah, so we let Luke have it way too early. And he was all over, you had a Facebook account at what, 12?
No. 13.
Big, huge difference.
It's back when he had short hair.
Yeah.
Now look at him.
Yeah.
Look what Facebook did to your kid.
We've gone through some hairstyles on Facebook, but you know, what do you see, like, what do you see as the most potential, the biggest avenues for getting yourself in trouble, like in high school?
Probably Instagram.
Okay.
Specifically.
Like what? Like, give us examples if you want.
I just think there's so many more ways to share something on Instagram that you end up sharing something that shouldn't be shared.
Yeah.
Well, and you get used to it. Y'all grew up, I mean, we didn't grow up with this.
Oh, yeah.
So thank God.
Oh, my gosh.
Because I know we did really dumb stuff growing up. And so nobody had cameras back then. I mean, you know, unless somebody brought their Polaroid to a party, nothing was happening. Well, and so we could do stupid stuff in relative anonymity, but y'all can't. And you're so used to it, and you don't realize it follows you forever.
Well, I think about this, like I get in a fight with my girlfriend in high school, and like I'm just furiously writing a note that I am going to pass to her at the next,
and you fold it up
period
with a little tuck thing that says pull here.
You know, but if you could text all of that stuff, you could draw a stalking charge or a harassment charge or something like that.
Well, and that's something that's a really good point, is all these cyber crimes that we have now over the last decade and a half. Cyber stalking, online harassment, basically everything you did to Pat Likas.
Yeah, but I did exactly.
Pat Likas.
But yeah, you know, and one that, I mean, to kind of turn it to a serious point, but the, you know, promotion or possession of child pornography.
Sure.
With these, you know, pictures that kids take of themselves now.
Well, and I can remember that. Like, I mean, you know, with him, when I first realized he had a girlfriend and he was dating her, I was like, don't send, you know, pictures of yourself. And I remember him just looking at me like, do you think I would do that? And I was like, no, but I feel like as a lawyer, I should warn you that that's a big problem. You know,
you've got to, you know your kid, and you know, I mean, you know, Luke's not gonna do that. I know my kids aren't, but I said the same thing to my daughter. It's like, do not ever do that. And she said the same thing. Do you really think I'd do that? Come on, I know. I said, I know you know. But I feel better now that I've told you. At least now I know I've told you.
It's a spoken thing.
Just in case you didn't know.
Well, in the video games too, because you know at one point Luke was huge into Fortnite when it came in, and all of a sudden we had like this huge Sylvia, his mom, had like this huge bill of all these charges from Fortnite, and I read him the riot act, you know, like, what do you think you're doing, getting all these upgrades or whatever? And he's like, I didn't do it. Well, what had happened was somebody had hacked him. And it actually wasn't any fault of his own.
Yeah.
You know, after I screamed at him, you know, mercilessly about that.
For like over a month?
For over a month, yeah.
Oh, well, you know, just in case there's any lingering doubt, that same thing happened to my kid last summer, my 10-year-old. He was playing Roblox, which is another one of these online games.
Was it him or was it you, Joe?
This guy, a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And I got hit with $3,700
Sheesh.
in these, and I called up, or I emailed Apple, and you know, did the appeal through them, and said, I didn't do this. What are you talking about? Denied. They just flat out denied me. So I called my credit card company, and they were like, of course you didn't do that. And they reversed them all. Yeah. And Apple actually cut me off. Yeah. They shut down my iTunes account, and I had to call them up and say, what are you doing? And they're like, well, okay, we'll turn it back on. But if this ever happens again, we're going to permanently shut down your iTunes account.
Well, so had your son done it, or
no?
It was just somebody
he got hacked.
Yeah.
He got hacked, and it was a glitch in their system, and they just wouldn't pay it back. I don't know why. Yeah. But so I got Amex to do it.
So moving on to college. So I've had some mind-numbingly stupid college kids getting in trouble. I mean,
oh yeah.
You know, these were actually really bright kids with bright futures who did like really stupid things, usually for the most part dumb things that were not things that hurt anybody. But you know, one of the things I was talking to my wife, who she was like an RA when she was in college, you know, back in the 90s. And one of the issues that I'm sure you've dealt with, I know I have, is privacy in a dorm that you share with somebody.
Yeah.
And you know, what do you do? What do you do if you got a roommate who's likes keeping his weed in there, and you have been properly advised not to do that on school property? And have you dealt with this when?
I haven't had that specific issue.
So I've had a case where basically my client was smoking weed. His roommate was so not down with that, and so called the police. You know, he did it when the kid wasn't there, when my client wasn't there, but he basically said, "Welcome to our dorm, come on in." And so I guess one of the first lessons that I would give you, my child, is to tell you that you're going to be in a dorm, and you're going to have a roommate in the dorm, and your expectation of privacy there is gone.
Yeah.
At least legally.
Yeah.
So why don't you educate us on the law when it comes to that? That's the only reason we brought you.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. This will be a short talk.
Do law talk on expectations of privacy and.
Well, when you've got cohabitants of a place, the law has kind of shifted a little bit, and it used to be, you know, back when we were early on in our prosecution days, if you had, let's say you had a husband, wife, or roommates, and one of them was not present, then the other one could give carte blanche access to the entire domicile, unless there was some place that was specifically controlled by one of them. So let's say somebody rented a room out of a house and they had a separate key and a lock, you know, that
you could fight
the door. Yeah, you could. The police, the person who had access to the common areas could not give the police access to that exclusively controlled room.
Right.
And then that kind of went away for a little bit with a case out of Georgia. The Supreme Court decided back 15, 20 years ago where there was they were hauling the husband away, and he said no, and the wife said, well, yeah, you can come in. And for a while, the Supreme Court said you can't do that. But then they kind of clarified it a little later and said the person who's there, they can give access as long as the police didn't remove that person. I'm hoping I'm getting this right. I think I am. With the specific intent so that they couldn't object. Yeah, to the search. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Basically, if you share a room, if you have common areas in a room, a dorm room or an apartment or whatever, and or even if I would say, if I'm arguing for the police, if you have, you know, let's say it's an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment, you've got 2 people, and it's understood that the roommates can go in and out of each other's bedrooms, I would say those are not, if I'm arguing for the state, those are no longer mutually or exclusively controlled, and the whole area is a common area. So your roommate could let the police in. So
do you understand what we're saying?
Basically,
I think so.
Don't live with a snitch. That's what we're telling you.
Right. And also,
better not snitch on me.
Yeah, well, but I mean, but seriously, like, you know, if you have to be cautious about those things that you leave behind in your room, and that includes booze too. You know, I mean, I tried to get the kid to go have a beer with me when we were in London, and it was legal at the age of 18.
Wasn't for me.
He's not a big alcohol guy, but like a lot of alcohol violations are right. Probably a solid 70% of what I get on.
Oh yeah. Well, and even if that's not the charge, if it's not a minor possession or a DWI or something like, or a public intoxication, probably whatever they did, alcohol was a factor into getting them to do whatever they did.
Yeah.
And that was actually going to be, once we got off the social media thing that I think that's got to be the #1 deal, especially when you're going into college, because now a lot of your friends, it is legal for them. So they can go in and out of bars and do whatever they want. And then if you want to hang out with them, you got to go get a fake ID, which is a crime. You get an overzealous prosecutor. Instead of it being a Class C misdemeanor, it's going to be a 3rd-degree felony.
Absolutely. So
you're looking at 10 years in prison instead of a traffic ticket.
Look at that face.
You get nervous.
All my IDs are real.
Can we get some water in here for this guy?
Expired.
He's just going to throw it on his face. No, but you know, so what Joe's talking about is there are a lot of people, and a lot of times it may be a club that you just want to go to with no intention of drinking. You know, that'll happen sometimes too, where there's an age limit on who can go in, because I mean, some kids in college are only 17, and there are plenty of bars that won't let you in if you're under 21, and there are a lot of people that think like, hey, if I just borrow my roommate's ID because he's got a new one, I could pretend I'm him and go in. If a cop detains you and you've got that can be problems for you. And I swear the one that just absolutely kills me every time is when the cop asks for the ID and they give them the fake one. Mm-hmm. Because that's when you're going to draw a charge of of doing, if the cop is nice, you get like a failure to ID, which is just a Class B misdemeanor. But like you said, it could be a much more serious, up to a third degree. And the people that get fake ones, like, dude, just don't do it.
Yeah, like if you go, I mean, it's one thing to get a fake ID, and I don't know if, I mean, they used to be able to do that, like sketchy dudes at the mall.
Yeah.
Back when we were
McLovin.
McLovin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But if you actually were brazen enough to get somebody's birth certificate, or I guess I shouldn't teach people how to do this, but get some identifying information and go down to DPS and get an actual DPS issued ID with your picture on it, with somebody else's name on it, now you're probably really looking at a felony with tampering with a government document or forgery of a government document. Yeah. And that's, I mean, that's, even if you don't get prison time, which you probably wouldn't, you don't want a felony on your record forever. So for something stupid. So
and
that's,
you get kicked out of school too.
Oh, yeah.
Not to mention that, you know.
Right.
You know, you were born after 9/11, but after 9/11, people started taking your IDs super seriously and making sure that nobody was, you know, having fake ones. But here's another one that I deal with all the time. If you go to a bar and let's say that you're holding a beer for your girlfriend or whatever, and the cops come up, that's going to be what we call a Class C misdemeanor of minor in possession, which is the lowest level of offense that you can possibly get.
What's it called? Sorry?
Minor in possession of alcohol.
it's a traffic ticket.
It's basically the same thing as a traffic ticket. And the thing that just kills me is when I deal with a student who thinks that an MIP is the end of the world. So either A, they're going to try to lie their way out of it with a fake ID, or B, run. Like, have you had the runners?
Oh yeah.
Where you're just looking at them
Sure.
like, what? No.
Right.
Like you
Yeah.
just upgraded your charge, because running from the cops is so much more of a serious charge than being a minor in possession of alcohol. And there's so many kids that are so adverse to getting in any type of trouble at all that they get so amped up of just getting out of it that they'll commit worse crimes.
Well, the analogous situation that I know we've seen from the thousands of shifts that you and I both worked at intake is someone who gets pulled over on traffic and they got some weed in the car, and so they either dump it out the window or they eat it.
Yeah.
And they've taken
Eat it?
Oh yeah. They've taken now what is a Class B misdemeanor, which is serious enough, up to 6 months in jail, $2,000 fine, but now they're charged with tampering with evidence, and it's now a third-degree felony, 2 to 10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. So kind of like the same thing. It's like the line we got from the Clinton administration. It's not the crime, it's the cover-up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where you get into a lot of trouble, is trying to cover things up.
So your republicanism is showing. I think we got that actually from the Nixon.
People eat weed?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, like they just got a joint and they just think that they'll just eat it. There's actually a legendary story of somebody that tried to eat the whole bag and choked to death, which was real, you know, he got the death
Way to
penalty
go.
for it. So, yeah, when Todd DuPont and I used to host this show, we thought about doing a segment called Making Matters Worse, about people that are caught for low-level stuff and then they escalate the violence. I wanted to call it Hey Dumbass, but just talking about these different things that these kids do because it's just their natural reaction, or the ones that bow up on the cops unnecessarily, or try to drop their mom or their dad is an important person, or I mean, I've seen the gamut. I've seen the ones of the kids that are just about to vomit and pass out to the people that could be running a cell block.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying to send your kid off into the world on that. I'm checking our comments to see if anybody's commented so far. Luke's friend Will Carlson, Chris's nephew, has mostly said that he is a Fortnite pro and the GOAT. So shout out to Will Carlson, our neighbor.
Thank you, Will Carlson.
And so.
Well, all he has to do is go talk to his uncle for some good stories.
No, like when he told me that he was Chris's nephew, I was like,
You can't hang out with my son.
Chris, in a world full of sordid stories,
Right. He's all
one
over
man stood at the head of the line.
Speaking of social media getting you in trouble.
Yeah, Chris Carlson.
His beard is luxurious.
It's
nice.
He does, and I don't know if you follow him on Facebook, but he's also very decked out. He and Trinidad. You've met Trinidad.
Big Bad Trinidad.
Big Bad Trinidad Zamora. Because he knows all these people. They've watched him grow up. But yeah, they're very very snazzy dressers. They're in the courthouse. So talking about that, talking about some of our lower level crimes, my advice: don't keep anything that you're not supposed to have in your dorm room. That's the first one, because there are a lot of schools, and I deal with Texas A&M a lot because I'm from Brazos County. Still, my folks are up there, and I will go deal with them. They don't mess around with kicking you out of school when you get in trouble for things like this. Another thing, because Luke is a swimmer and is going to be on St. Thomas's swim team, a lot of things that you have to worry about is hazing.
Oh yeah.
Hazing will get you kicked out of school super fast, and and I can't give any details. I
biting my tongue ever since you started this.
I can't give any details on cases I've represented, but I've dealt with hazing.
We've both done it.
Yeah, and that is something that can, out of hazing, what seems like a harmless, fun prank, you really can see cops bend over backwards. To try to make an example out of people, especially if they're affiliated with a sports team or something like that, or if something has hit the media and they feel like they need to do that. I mean, you see people charged with hazing where it could be, where they're alleged to have done some hazing where it could be assault. We've seen a lot of alcohol-related deaths where they're talking about murder. And charges where someone goes in there and drinks to the point where somebody dies, and other kids were the ones that brought alcohol to the party. You're kind of a sitting duck on that. You're responsible as the most responsible person there.
Yeah, it was. I was actually talking to somebody today about a case that happened 25 years ago that I vaguely remember. He remembered it, where it was at the school where I went, the better school. Where there was a fraternity hazing incident where this guy had broken up with his girlfriend and was drinking at a party all night, and then his fraternity's pledges got a hold of him and actually tied him to a chair and were giving him shot after shot. He died of alcohol poisoning, but the police found him dead, tied to a chair. And so it was, so not only do you worry about the criminal aspect of it, that aside, just a lot of the things, and it kind of goes back to, you've got teenagers whose, I'm not making this up, this is science, brains are not fully formed yet, kind of on their own, and with all this freedom, and do these crazy things, and sometimes people get hurt and they die. And so it's, it's unfortunate, it's terrible, but it's something we've all seen. One
of my favorite stories, this was that when I was at A&M, I interned at the DA's office in Brazos County. And there was a fraternity there that they were going to go kidnap their pledges, their freshmen, and they were going to go kick in their door and like
so it's a burg cab.
Well, they go to the wrong house and they end up kicking the door of a university police officer, university police department. I remember his name was Crenshaw, and by the time he calls it in, they're all he's laid them all out, knocked the crap out of them, and they're all zip tied and laying on his living room floor when the cops arrive and just take all these guys to jail. And but these things can go wrong really fast, and schools aren't messing around anymore. They're like the stuff that used to just get you in big trouble with your parents.
Right
now, you can go to jail for, and and in a lot of communities, like in College Station in Brazos County, you've been up there.
Unfortunately,
they are unrelenting.
Oh yeah,
they treat a lot of these minor infractions like capital crimes. And it's almost like the DA's office there is just out to ruin their lives.
Right.
And that makes, I was glad that he was going, that Luke's going to St. Thomas, because I was like, man, I don't want to send you to A&M. Now, we are in the national championship in baseball against UT. That's y'all, right? Oh, no, it's Tennessee. Sorry, wrong UT. But I wouldn't want my kid going to school in that community because it is zero tolerance,
Right.
and they don't care how bright your future is or how small the infraction is. And
No.
it terrifies me.
No, they like to, it seems like, and I've got limited experience up there, professionally speaking, but it seems like they like to, on the one hand, they like to protect their students, but on the other hand, they really like to go after them.
Yeah.
And it's bizarre. But everything about that town is bizarre. So
You know, and thank God that people don't really write paper checks anymore, because like the misdemeanor prosecutors there, they used to have a huge hot check roundup, and they filed them all as theft by checks.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, here's a good thing: as someone who I can repeatedly get notices of his balance being below $50,
Right.
Pocket watch.
You have access to my bank account?
yeah,
Wait a
right,
minute.
right. You know, it's like, oh my God, you could mess up your checking account and go to jail.
Right.
And I mean, that was terrifying to me, and it's really terrifying, you know, as we go forward, you know, now in the big city of Houston. But I actually, you know, for all my gripes that I have on occasion about the Harris County DA's office, I actually feel like they're a lot more understanding than a lot of these smaller counties on these infractions.
I'd like to add that my bank account is above $50 at the moment, guys.
Because you got graduation money, and shout out Aunt Carrie for that. But I guess the thing that's like the most uncomfortable thing for me to talk about with him. Now, Luke's got a girlfriend. If you want, I don't know if you wanted to give a shout out to.
Shout out to Tegan Presley Franco, my girlfriend.
Okay.
You want to give her social security number while you're at it?
Anything else? There are people Googling her name right now. But, you know, he's been together with his girlfriend for almost 3 years now.
Over 3 years.
Over 3 years. And so, you know, but like, to me, it would be terrifying sending a kid in there and not knowing what dating life is like now.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I was a disaster even as a grown-up in dating life, but you know, with the things, I mean, have you dealt with these cases that, you know, things happen at parties where everybody's intoxicated and all of a sudden somebody's drawn a charge?
Right, yeah.
And that is, like, to me, I don't even know how you advise on that, you know, other than just stay sober.
Right. I mean, it's,
Like,
you know,
it's uncomfortable to talk about.
once you get behind closed doors, because it's such a serious topic, such a serious crime, prosecutors and police officers take it extremely serious, and they should.
Sure.
But all for such a serious crime, all it takes is the allegation of one person.
Yeah.
And whether that comes to fruition and you know, somebody actually is convicted of it, that accusation is there, and it can follow you for a long time. I mean, even if your case is dismissed and it's expunged and all that, there's still people out there who heard about it. So you've got to be really careful, and you've got to use judgment about who you're around and what happens, and, you know, not going behind closed doors unless you're in a very, you know, you trust the situation.
And let me ask you this, Luke. This doesn't apply to you because you don't date around, obviously. But like, is that something that's like a concerning topic at the high school level about people and consent and
Yes.
worrying about that? Like, what? Like, how does it manifest? Like, how does that play out in high school? Like, is that something that people talk about being concerned about in
Yes.
your group? Like, what are the conversations like?
Not trying to get.
Don't name anybody.
No, yeah.
Don't name anybody.
But that was a thing that happened this year.
Yeah.
And it was like continued to graduation to the point where this kid, who allegedly did some horrible things.
And just because we've mentioned a relative of Chris Carlson's does not mean we're talking about him.
We're not talking about William Reed Carlson at the moment, I promise you.
More full names, dates of birth.
No, but it got to the point where this kid was getting booed at ceremonies at school because everyone had heard about what he.
And was there a police investigation?
Yes.
And do you know what became of it?
Not sure.
Yeah. And was this person an adult or a juvenile?
A juvenile. We were in the same class.
Well, you're not a juvenile, big guy. You haven't been a juvenile since 2
years.
Yeah, since you turned
Ah,
17.
Well, then I want to retract that statement.
Okay, so he was an adult.
Yes.
Okay,
17.
Because juvenile records are obviously sealed. You wouldn't have heard of that, but so to your knowledge, charges were never filed on that, but they were investigated. And was that kind of holy crap moment? I mean, where people were like,
Yeah.
you know, like this could be any of us in a situation where
Kind of turned our social groups at school like on its side. Like everything was kind of up in the air for a little bit.
over what really happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think that I think that that's what happens in real life too, is that you have these situations where you can be dealing with what appears to be a really good kid being accused of doing something by another really good kid. And, you know, I wouldn't even say 9 times out of 10, I would say 10 times out of 10, alcohol's involved.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, to me, that's terrifying. You know, as much as I wanted you to have a beer with me when we were, you know, when we were in London, I mean, there's part of me that sleeps very easy not knowing that you're not. Because you know your father's peer pressuring you, and you're still resisting it. But you know that's a really scary thing, because I'm sure that no matter what camp you were in over who you believed in your situation, you would acknowledge that both sides were going through a lot. You know, the accusation and the accusation can be just as devastating, even if the charges never do, you know, come to fruition.
Yep.
And you know, I mean, you don't want to, you know, sound like you're going back to 1940s and 1950s values, but you really do need to be careful who you're hooking up with. And love having that conversation with my son on live TV. But it is, I mean, it is.
Tell us all about it, Luke.
Yeah, you know,
I plead the fifth. Actually.
yeah,
Good answer.
Yeah,
Shout out, Dad.
but it is, you know, but it is like we adore his girlfriend. She's the sweetest and the greatest, and we're glad that Luke is in a respectful and committed relationship with her, and we're glad for that, because we all know somebody that like puts themselves in risky situations, you know, quite a bit,
right?
And, you know, and it can turn south.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are some other fun ways to get in trouble in college?
Oh, is this me now?
Yeah.
Eating weed, apparently.
Eating weed is.
We've covered that.
Okay.
We're looking for new.
I'm still stuck on that.
So let me ask you this, without naming any names. For you know, plenty of people have gone off to college. What's the worst you've heard of somebody getting in trouble legally in college?
I don't know.
Nothing.
I try to surround myself with people that don't get in trouble in college.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure.
Pretend he's not your dad.
Yeah.
Where do I start? Honestly, I'm not sure.
Okay. So, you know, another one that we haven't really talked about is prevalent is obviously the driving while intoxicated.
Yes, sir. Like Justin Timberlake.
Like Justin Timberlake.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Have you
see
read
the mugshot?
Yeah, I saw it.
Mugshot tells you nothing,
No.
Luke. I mean, you've been the son of a defense attorney for a while now. Come on.
We both prosecuted plenty of DWI cases to know that just because they said this stuff happened.
My apologies.
Yeah, well, you know, and you know, Justin Timberlake had his own legal trouble here in Houston during the Super Bowl. Yeah, when
His indecent exposure case.
Yeah, you know, DA Intake received a lot of phone calls wanting him like arrested immediately for him and Janet Jackson arrested for that. So hopefully he got that expunged. You know, but you know, the thing that I don't get, you know, and I'll be candid, especially in my prosecutorial days, there were plenty of times that I should have driven home. But now with Uber, I don't know why any parent would send their kid off to school without just an open Uber account.
Right.
You know, because I mean, I prosecuted cases where a carload of Rice students got hit by a drunk driver and it killed one of them.
Yeah.
And I just cannot fathom getting that phone call.
Right.
And to me, I mean, they were the sober ones actually. They got hit by a drunk driver that didn't have anything to do with school. But I mean, like that's terrifying. Mm-hmm. You know, Luke is, you know, fortunately, you know, staying close. You know, he's going to school in Houston. But I mean, I just can't fathom, and my heart breaks for those parents that get those phone calls. Because you know, it doesn't matter how old they are, you still worry about them.
Oh yeah.
You know, and you're petrified of getting that phone call in the middle of the night that something bad has happened. Mm-hmm. And you know, I think at some point if you got a call that they'd gotten arrested for DWI, if they were okay, that would be a win. You know, as long as they were good. But there's just no reason for it now.
Right.
With Uber, and you know, with Luke not drinking, and I know that a bunch of people are going to be telling me, you believe that? Yeah, and
I
yes,
promise you guys.
I do. I do believe
it
that.
It tastes so bad.
I do believe that my child at least does not drink. I didn't drink at his age. I didn't start drinking until like I was almost 20.
I didn't start drinking until you were my boss.
Yeah.
Does it like start tasting good at some point?
You get used to it. Your Aunt Carrie used to tell me it was an acquired taste, and I would say that's a taste I did not want to acquire, but ultimately I obviously got over that. I had you and Devlin, and neither one of you all drank, and I was like, what type of joke is this that Lynn McClellan has given me like 2 non-drinking 20-somethings? I thought y'all had to be my instant best friends, and y'all didn't even drink. But, you know, the concern I do have to have for you is that you get in the car with somebody who has, and it's their car, and they don't want to let you drive it or let anybody else, or they don't want to admit, and, you know, and you just hope that you can preach to your kid, don't ever get in that car. Don't get in the car with, like, take one. Take an Uber, not even with somebody, because the thing is that these idiots, when they're that young, they don't know how to drink. You know, I remember my dad always said, you know, that he stayed away from St. Patrick's Day because that was when the amateurs were out. All the college students are such amateurs at this. Like, they drink and want to do like Dukes of Hazzard down the highway. The professionals were always we're going to go super slow and try to stay between the lanes. And the college kids scare me to death with what they do, because they always get in accidents, you know, and it's...
Well, there's another one, speaking of, it doesn't have to do with alcohol, but you see people not, and this isn't necessarily school related, but certainly age related, and almost exclusively male related, is racing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I live pretty close to 610, so I hear the motorcycles and those stupid revved up bzzz cars all night, and it's ridiculous. I prosecuted a case back in 2008, maybe 2007, where these 2 guys were racing down 45 at like 2 in the morning, and the defendant was, I think, in a Camaro. And the reason that's relevant is because, you know, it has that sloping hood. And they're racing, he's racing like a Dodge Charger or something, and he went under the back of a pickup and rolled it off the embankment off of 45.
He rolled the pickup off?
Yeah, because he went under it.
Pried it off.
And yeah, and it rolled over, and that truck was coming back from Texas Women's because the driver was driving his pregnant girlfriend back from the hospital because she had false labor. And she died immediately, but the baby didn't.
Yeah.
And so they take her to the hospital, and they perform an emergency C-section because this little girl was obviously so far along. That's why the false labor was an issue. And they kept her on life support for 30 days. But then she had just gone apoxic long enough because her mom wasn't feeding her oxygen.
Yeah.
They ultimately had to take her off life support too. I mean, it was awful for these 2 guys being complete idiots.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the defendant was a perfectly nice guy in his normal life, but, you know.
Horrific consequences.
Oh, yeah, killed 2 people just because he was being stupid.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, again, like you're talking about the Rice kids getting hit by a drunk driver. They're not doing anything wrong. This family wasn't doing anything wrong. And they just, I mean, just by astronomical odds happened to be in the wrong spot, and 2 people dead.
Well, you know, and I mean, as a parent, it's terrifying. You know, I mean, it is that you're sending your kid out into the real world like that. Assaults are another one. Like, you get in a fight, if you win it, they may charge you with an assault. You know, you say you're going to kick somebody's butt, and they may charge you with terroristic threat. And everybody always, Luke just made the face of terroristic threat. Like, it doesn't mean you're a terrorist. It just means you have threatened to cause harm to somebody. We get that a lot from our clients. Like, terroristic threat? I'm not a terrorist. But no, it's any threat that you make can be a Class B misdemeanor, something like that. People that call in bomb threats to get out of a final, that's a biggie.
Yeah, that's a felony.
That's a felony. Absolutely. It used to happen all the time when I was there. Like, or somebody pulls the fire alarm. I've represented people for pulling the fire alarm in the dorm just for grins. That will lead to that just led to a misdemeanor, but still, you know, and you get saddled with a bill. Not to mention, we attorneys are expensive. when mom and dad have to shell out for us. So let's do this. Can you think of any other ones we need to advise this young man of before we send him off to college?
Bestiality is still a crime in Texas, just so you know.
But not at A&M.
It's a good point. I forgot, but he's not going there.
And that's true. See,
Nothing could have prepared me for that to be the question.
Yeah. All right, so we'll do a pop quiz. Police officers come. They knock on your door at your dorm. They say your next door neighbor reports that they smell weed coming from your dorm. Can we come in and look around? What do you say?
We're supposed to say no, right?
Correct.
1 for 1.
All right.
Just always say default to no.
Do you have a warrant? Like his phone?
Like Joe's phone. Yeah, like Joe's phone. Somebody said, we have a comment.
I'd like to add that I'm disappointed in Damon's lack of attendance today.
Yeah, Damon is not watching. We asked him if he would join us, and he didn't want to be in the same place. Well, see, he's vice president, and Joe is president, so they're not allowed, because of the succession of power.
I understand.
They can't, they can't be in the same
He's Mike Kiefer
room
Sutherland
at the same time.
I was just about to make that reference.
Survivor.
Yeah, designated survivor. Juan Aguirre says juvenile and young adult cases went way up when the school started having police forces, and that's a great point.
I have one of his shirts.
One of Juan's shirts, yeah, Juan.
I wear it often.
Yeah, Juan's a great guy, good friend. But the policing of schools. Now, I don't know, Juan brings it up, but when I went to A&M, now Juan's a lot older than I am by a solid, 15 to 20 years, I think. And
he's 100?
He went to A&M as well. Now, when I was at A&M, there was a police force there, and I think that most universities do have that. You don't see them a lot because.
But not every police force carries sabers.
Correct.
Like the Aggies do.
But I completely agree with Juan on like the ISDs.
Oh yeah.
Like, there wasn't a cop when I went to high school. There was the A&M University PD.
We had a precinct 5 deputy show up every now and then.
And his name was McGruff the crime dog, and he was your best friend.
I've
heard they're bringing McGruff back.
He helped me not get Brent Mayer
the Brent Mayer bullying bear.
It's Billy the No Bully Bear.
Billy the.
I thought it was Bernard.
Whatever he feels.
See,
like.
This is why you're not cut out for life crime. You got to keep your story straight.
Right.
Exactly. This is why you always tell the police no.
All right. So here's an opinion question for the person who maybe has had a few drinks and gets pulled over. Where are you on the blow or don't blow camp?
Well, that question doesn't really matter anymore. Not here, because if you don't blow, they're going to get a warrant.
Right.
And so what you've done is you've given them a reason to tell a jury that you're hiding evidence because, as we know, but the audience may not know, that refusing to blow in a breathalyzer is not protected under the Fifth Amendment. So a prosecutor can go into court and say, hey, officer, did the defendant blow? No, he refused, and then argue to the jury he refused because he was hiding evidence. They still get to do that. Now, in the last, decade, I mean, when we were prosecutors, it happened every now and then on holiday weekends, and then it moved to weekends, and now it's pretty much all the time, no refusal, where if you don't blow, then they'll just go get a search warrant for your blood.
But so and you would agree with me that the defense bar is in two different camps on that. There's some people that will say you should blow because what you just said, they're going to get you eventually.
Right.
There
are some people who give legal advice in the title of their website about whether or not they should blow.
Do you know who we're talking about?
No.
DoNotBlow.com?
DoNotBlow.com.
You never heard of that?
I hope that's law related.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
It's Tyler Flood. You didn't know that?
No.
You know Tyler.
I do. With the golf machine.
So Tyler is of that camp, but quite frankly, I tend to agree with him because I'll qualify that. Mm-hmm. It depends on whether or not a cop is freestyling his warrant or they have their cookie cutter.
Right.
Because I've seen ones where they've freestyled it and screwed up that warrant, and they're
well. And the good news for the defense, I guess, on DWIs, and I don't mean this to
you can get rid of the
decapitated
bear. It's looking like you have a bear.
I want to give carte blanche opinion that, go out and commit a DWI because we can get you out of it. That's not the case.
Yeah.
But at kind of every step along the way in a DWI investigation, there is somewhere for some officer or some phlebotomist or some RN or LVN to really screw something up. Like you're talking about, they can screw up the warrant. Tyler, speaking of Tyler, he gave at one of the, I think it was TCDLA's Top Gun.
Top Gun, yeah.
He called it talking about blood cases, from the stab to the lab.
Yeah.
And from when they stick you with the needle and draw your blood up until it's analyzed and they spit out a BAC, that there are just all these steps along the way where they can screw something up.
Yeah.
And so, that's kind of like we were talking about the Justin Timberlake. When I said, look, just because they said he did it doesn't mean he did, because there are lots of explanations. And a lot of these cops, I guess the good thing for the defense bar, not necessarily for the public, is a lot of these guys pulling people over for DWIs haven't been doing this very long.
Right.
And they might have taken a class where they're NHTSA certified
to
administer the standardized field sobriety test, but it doesn't mean they do it right.
Yeah.
And then maybe that intoxilizer down at HPD isn't functioning right because their technical supervisor, who we've dealt with a lot.
Yeah, no, and I mean we've had that where some technical supervisor flubbed their education hours and everything just went out the window.
Right.
So
I used to think they were making that up a lot of times on these TV shows, like, oh, this is bad. Everybody they ever put in jail is going to get out. And that typically doesn't happen, but sometimes with these analysts, and it's happened more frequently recently, where they make something up, or they're what we call dry labbing, and they're not actually doing the work they say they're doing, that pretty much everything they've ever done is called into question. And a lot of times, their cases get thrown out.
Luke, you have a message that says, "Let's go, Luke. Love you from Smith." So if you want to give your little brother a shout out. Trinidad Zamora's, he was not watching when you gave him a shout out earlier, but
shout out Big Bad Trinidad.
Yeah.
Best dressed
lawyer in the courthouse. I think that Carlson may argue, but they basically, I think they call each other in the mornings and figure out what they're
I'm more familiar with the drip of Trinidad, though.
I think they just share a closet. They've just got a big...
So you said something, and I do want to address this when you said, bad for the public, good for, our cases, is that, the purpose of doing this show is not to teach your kids how to get away with crimes, but it is important that when your kid goes off to college, for them to know their rights.
Right.
Because most police officers, especially in college settings, they are usually very correct in assessing that the kid does not know it. Not a child anymore, but that they don't know their rights. And when they say, hey man, you mind if I just come in and take a look in your car? You don't know what your friend may have left in your car.
Right.
You always want to assert your rights because it makes your lawyer or lawyer dad or lawyer mom, it makes our jobs easier to do.
That's actually a really good point. There's a distinction, and they're taught. Make no mistake about it, they are taught to do this. If a police officer asks you, do you mind if I do this? Or if they say, let's say they pull you over and say, hey, I'm gonna search your car, all right? And if you say, okay, that prosecutor is going to argue in court, you just gave consent.
Yeah.
So whether or not that officer had the right to do it, if you allow them to do it, game over.
They didn't need a warrant.
Right. So you can say, even if they have a warrant, you can still say no. Now, if they have a warrant, or in a vehicle if they have probable cause to search, your saying no doesn't really matter, but they can't argue that you gave consent. So they are taught to make it sound like they're telling you that you have no choice, but they're asking you, and by you saying okay or sure, go ahead, anything that we could do to suppress that evidence and keep it out in courtroom, you just kind of pissed it away, basically. Yeah. So that's a good point. A good lesson to teach kids is know your rights and know that you can say no, and that just because someone's wearing a badge doesn't mean they get to tell you what to do.
And here's another thing. Your mom and dad can't save you.
Right.
If you say, I'd like to talk to my mom or dad, you are not constitutionally entitled to talk to your mom or dad. You are, however, entitled to talk to your lawyer.
Right.
So for me, I'm good?
Huh?
Would I be good?
Not if you ask for your mom or your dad. If you say, I want to talk to my lawyer, you are. And I would actually, we've only got 2 minutes left, but I would tell anybody who's sending their kid off to college, especially if they're going to be in a town where mom and dad aren't, to tell them, you have a lawyer. Get a family friend, I don't care who, everybody knows a lawyer somewhere, we just know a lot of them, and just say, if you ever get in trouble, tell them this is your lawyer. I don't care if he wrote your mom and dad's will. As long as you are sitting there saying, I don't want to do another thing until I talk to my lawyer, you're protecting your rights as you should, and you're going to help out whoever ultimately ends up being your criminal lawyer a lot.
And then let those be your last words.
Yeah, don't talk.
Don't say, I want a lawyer, and then they ask you a question and you keep talking. Because there's law saying, well, they clearly understood, and they might have said they wanted a lawyer, but then they went ahead and talked some more. So, yeah, clearly they waived their right. They understood their rights and they waived them. No, I want my lawyer. That's it. Well, okay, but, you know, this is going to look real bad for you. I want my lawyer.
Yeah, the police officers will absolutely try to emotionally manipulate you. They'll be your buddy. They'll try to come down hard on you. They'll act like you're just doing something that you should be doing as a good person. They will nod along with you until you nod along with them. There are so many different things, and you should, Joe's right, say, I want my lawyer, and not say another thing after that. You want to be helpful, but you may end up going to jail, but when we go to court, that's where it really matters.
And if they really just want you to help out, they'll do that with your lawyer there. If they're just if you're just a witness and somebody who can do something for them, it doesn't hurt them to have your lawyer there.
Yeah.
But if you're a target and your lawyer's there, you're done. So
we got 30 seconds. It's great having Luke Newman, my son, I promise, on air tonight. We're talking about, this is a great episode. I think parents, get your kids a lawyer before you send them off to college, as jaded as that seems. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, HCCLA President Joe Vinas, for being here.
Thank you, Mark.
And I think we will see you in 3 weeks, because in 2 weeks it's 4th of July. But we'll see you soon, and we'll let you know on our Facebook page. Thank you. Have a good night.